Hello and welcome to another episode of the Top Dogs podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. My name is Rob Doster. UConn is coming off of a 77-73 win over Florida in Madison Square Garden in the nightcap of the Jimmy V Classic last night. I was up there in the Garden, and we did our show from up there. And later on in this episode, you are going to hear from Jeff Goodman, Terrence Oglesby, and myself breaking down what we saw out of the Huskies in their win last night. So I will be relatively brief on this specific episode because I'll be able to talk a little bit more. You'll hear a little bit more about what I have to say in that segment tonight. I will say there's a couple of overarching takeaways that I think we can start to put together here based off of a larger sample size of seeing this UConn team play and seeing the way that some of these rotations come together. And I think the biggest one is that um, when Solo Ball and Alex Caravan are knocking down their open threes, this becomes an incredibly difficult team to deal with. When you combine that with having a guy in the post in Terrace Reed who you can run offense through, who frankly did a really, really good job kind of sealing and being big and physical last night against one of the biggest and most physical fresh front lines that you're going to find. I think that's when UConn becomes really, really good and really, really dangerous. Now, there are limits to what I believe this team can be if Silas Demery does not find a way to be able to get into his rhythm. And I've said this over and over again. You're going to hear me continue to say this over and over again. Um, but he needs to get to a point where he is playing like one of the best point guards in the sport. Because right now, to be honest, I think Malachi Smith is the better option for UConn to have. Because Malachi has kind of figured out what is being expected of him as a creator. I think part of the reason why he's been more successful is that Malachi is wired more to be a facilitator, right? I think Silas Demery, at his core, is a guy that is kind of a primary scorer, right? Like his first inclination is to go and create something for himself, and he has the ability to be able to turn that into an opportunity to create for his teammates when he is playing well and when the opportunity presents itself. But who he is as a player, his first inclination is to be a scorer and a scoring threat. And I don't think that's the case with Malachi Smith. And I think what the result has been is that Malachi's been able to kind of pick up what UConn wants to be able to do a little bit quicker and has gotten a little bit more comfortable with the offense before Silas Demery's had a chance to be able to get comfortable with the offense. And I think the biggest thing is that when you have the likes of Braylon Mullins and Solo Ball and Alex Caravan and Terrace Reed, you have a lot of guys that are finishers, that can finish actions, that can finish sets, that can finish plays, that are out there because of the end product of what they do, right? Generally speaking, if you are putting Terrace Reed in action and you are giving him the ball, you are doing it because you want him to be able to score. If you're if you're finding a way to get the ball in Solo Ball's hands, generally speaking, you want that to end with a shot, right? Alex Caravan a little bit less so, but he's kind of at his best um, when he is being able to be the finisher, right? Like he hit a couple of huge threes in transition last night. And that's kind of when he's at his best. Same with Braylon Mullins. Like you want him to be the guy that finishes off an action. And the tough part about Demery is that he's a little bit more of a finisher than he is a table setter. And I think when you have that many guys that are out there looking to finish, it's hard to find a way to be able to get them to be put into the correct spots to be able to be set up. And I think that at this point in the season, Malachi Smith has figured out how to be able to be that table setter more within the context in the offense. I also think it's important to note that a lot of, I mean, we see the assist numbers, right? He had 9 assists and 1 turnover against Florida. He had 9 assists, I believe just 1 turnover, 14 points against Illinois. he's been a guy that has been able to create off the bounce. I think, and I'd have to go back to watch the film a little bit more closely to get an answer on this, but I think that a lot of that is coming from opportunities outside of just the structure of the offense, if that makes sense, right? I don't think that the majority of Malachi Smith's assists are a result of UConn running a set, Malachi setting, giving the ball to Solo ball as he curls off a screen, and Solo kind of running into one of those little foul line jumpers, right? I think the majority of Malachi's assists are once you run all that stuff and it kind of breaks down, he can kind of go out and create something or something that happens in transition. And I do believe that once Silas gets going, you'll be able to get a little bit more out of your offense if you are UConn. But I do think that that is something that's relevant. It's not a coincidence to me that in the last couple of games, especially at Kansas and on Tuesday night against Florida, when UConn made their run, made a game-changing run, it featured Malachi Smith on the floor, it featured Braylon Mullins on the floor, and it featured Jaden Ross on the floor. Um, but the biggest one was having Malachi Smith out there. And I think it's because of what he can do and the way that he can create towards the end of a clock. And it doesn't have to be him with the ball in his hands. I think that's the single biggest takeaway from UConn right now. And I think the way that they get to the point where they are the best team in basketball in February is by getting Silas Demery to where Malachi Smith is right now. And that's not, I'm not really breaking new ground when I say that, but I believe that that's probably where we are. Terrace Reed looked better than I thought he would look last night. Still dealt with some foul trouble, a lot of fouls, man. Like, okay, that's another thing I want to get into here. Is I think that the issue UConn has is that it's let me put it like this. There were 13 fouls, I believe. It was either 13 or 14. The ESPN box score that I was using went back and forth between having 13 and 14. But of all of those fouls that they had in the first half, I would say that all of them were fouls. I don't think that there was necessarily a bad call that was made on UConn last night, and that is continually becoming a theme with this group that they find their way into foul trouble. And I think that that was a little bit of a problem that they had last year, and I'm a little bit concerned about that potentially being something that doesn't go away as this season progresses. I'm willing to overlook Braylon Mullins dealing with it a little bit more than some of these other guys because he is a freshman and he is in the third game of his season, and uh, there's a reason why people say the best thing about freshmen is they become sophomores, right? Like he's still kind of figuring some stuff out on that end. Um, I think Solo's got to be better. I think Silas has to be better. I think Mally has to be better. And I think that Terrace Reed has to be better. It's a dangerous game dealing with that many fouls over that big of a period of time continually. Um, but beyond that, I think UConn is probably through the toughest part of their schedule at this point, right? That turn where you had BYU, then Arizona, then Illinois, then Kansas, and Florida in the span of less than 4 weeks is more than they are going to see in Big East play this year, right? All four of those teams right now are, well, I guess St. John's is now 16 and Kansas is 17 on KenPom. When I looked at this last night, all four of those teams were better than any team that UConn was going to see in the all five of those teams. Sorry, were better than any team that UConn was going to see in the Big East, and they made it through that stretch with 4 wins and a loss that did not feature two guys that I had an idea where they're going to be starting. So the good news is that over the course of um, the next 3 months, UConn will have a chance to be able to figure all of this stuff out in games that they probably should be able to win. But I do think that it is a concern that we're sitting here um, more than a month into the season, and this team that was supposed to be this juggernaut on the offensive end has not really figured that out. Now, I thought my single biggest takeaway from the UConn side last night was just how good they were on the defensive end once you got past the issues that they had with fouls. And the rotations were there. The ability to hedge out on the ball screens and have the weak side tagger get where he needed to be and still close out. The recognition that guys had with when they needed to step over and help and where the help needed to come from. The different coverages that they could run, the toughness and the physicality. I'll be honest, I think that this Florida team is significantly better than what their record says, right? They're 5-4 on the season. I know they lost to TCU, but they got a 6-point loss to Arizona, who is what, number one in the AP poll right now. They have a 4-point loss to a UConn, which is essentially a road game, in the Garden, who is number 5 in the AP poll. They have lost to Purdue. Who was the other loss? I'm gonna say this while I'm sitting here thinking about it. This is a great pod. Oh, they lost at Duke last Tuesday, who is number 4 in the AP poll. And that was by a shot at the buzzer in Cameron Indoor Stadium. They lost by 4 to TCU. Their 4 losses are by a combined 15 points. 3 of them are to top 5 teams. All 3 of them were effectively road settings. And TCU, while they are a very, very weird team right now, they are one of the only teams that was actually able to give Michigan a fight. So, Florida's issue and the way that they were built this season is that they have 2 of the best shot making guards in America last year on their roster, and Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee. And both of those guys are in the upper 90th percentile in terms of the number of shots that they took off the dribble, meaning that 75% of Xavier Lee's jumpers last season were off the dribble jumpers, and that was the 98th percentile in terms of what percentage of time your jump shots were off the dribble jumpers. Boogie Fland was the 97th percentile. Last year, Xavier Lee was in the 94th percentile in terms of points per shot off the dribble jumpers. And this year, he's in the 26th percentile. Xavier Lee this year is 2 for 14 on unguarded jump shots. And last year, he was one of the best in the country at unguarded jump shots. And Boogie Fland is not all that far away. Boogie Fland is shooting 23.8% from 3. Xavier Lee is shooting 20.3% from 3. These are 2 guys that are very good shooters that are shooting absolutely horrifically. And the way that this Florida roster was built is that they wanted to have 2 guys that could operate in ball screens, 2 guys that could create on their own, 2 guys that they could use it's this 3-low offense. It's the one where you have 2 shooters in the deep corners. You have a big guy at the rim and you run a high ball screen. And what you basically do is that guy comes off the handler comes off the ball screen. You can either put him in a Spain action, which means the guy under the basket sits a back screen on the roller. You can use it where if you get a lane, the guy under the basket can seal off that help defender, and all of a sudden your point guard is able to get downhill and get a layup. You can help off the wings. You get guys in the corner. It's become a really, really popular play in college basketball, and particularly in the SEC. And Florida's offense is essentially, we're going to run that all the time. And we're going to allow our 2 backcourt players to kind of go create. And if that doesn't work, we have a 4-man that is a terrific passer. We have a 3-man that is an All-American, and we are the second best team in the country in going and getting offensive rebounds. It's really not all that dissimilar from theoretically speaking, from the way that Houston kind of plays, and they have played in recent years. They're going to be tougher and bigger and more athletic, and they got 3 guys in the perimeter that can make shots. Florida has 2 guys that can make shots, and they're a little bit bigger than Houston has been. But so far, it's working, right? The shots that Florida has wanted to get, they've been able to get. The offensive rebounds they've wanted to get, they've been able to get. Tommy Hawk has been unbelievable. Alex Condon's kind of figured out some of the turnover issues you had in the first couple games of the season, and he's been looking like every bit the part of a future NBA player. Ruben Chinyelu is just a friggin' Greek god, bronze statue carved out of granite. Like, he's just ridiculously strong and big and long and athletic. And they're getting all of the shots that they want. The issue is whether or not those shots are ever going to go down. And if Xavier Lee shot, if Xavier Lee and Boogie Fland would have been shooting their career percentages from 3, then this Florida team would be undefeated right now. And I don't think that the difficulty on the shots that they're getting, like if you look at shot quality ratings, if you look at the tape, if you listen to anybody on the Florida staff, they are getting what they want. Those shots are just not going down right now. And I'm not sure what else you can do about that beyond just say, we got to stick with it, man. Process over results. And I think that this Florida team, I think this is going to be a one that ages really, really well, especially when you consider for the next 4 weeks, the Gators get George Washington, St. Francis, Colgate, and Dartmouth. They've played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 high major teams in their first 9 games. They finally get a chance to kind of have the schedule lighten up for them. This is going to be when Boogie Flan and Xavier Lee can kind of figure it out and get it going. And I say all that to say that I thought UConn, against this team that wants to play this very specific style, which can take advantage of some of the issues that UConn has, right? We talked about this in the preview pod, where you're going to have Jalen Stewart and Alex Caravan matching up with Tommy Hawk and Alex Condon, and UConn gave up 16 offensive rebounds to their 7. But UConn got more second chance points than Florida did. So they fought, they scrapped, they were able to keep Florida from taking advantage of those second chance opportunities. And that is something that I think is really, really significant, and it actually matters. Florida is really good. They executed their game plan. They did what they wanted to do. The shots did not go down, and UConn find a way to be able to win. And I think that is going to be a win that ends up aging really, really well. It's a good spot to be in right now if you are UConn, sitting at 9-1 with the wins that they have against the teams that they have, playing the way that they have, with an opportunity now on Friday against Texas and then heading into Big East play. There's a very real chance that UConn puts themselves in a position to be a number one seed. I don't think they'll be the number 1 overall seed. It's kind of looking like Michigan might never lose by less than 30 points again. So we'll see what happens there. But this should be another year where UConn can I think they're going to win the Big East regular season championship. I think they win it in relatively easy fashion. And I think that as they go through the Big East schedule and it gets a little bit easier, I think we're going to see Silas Demery start to figure it out a little bit more. I think we're going to see, Braylon Mullins get into a little bit more of a rhythm. And once all of that happens, this is going to be a really dangerous team. So I apologize for a pod that kind of turned into a little bit of, Rob rambling. I didn't get home last night until 3 a.m. from the Garden. I was up at 7:30 this morning to take my kids to get my kids on the bus, and it's been a lot of moving parts here. So I'm a little bit scatterbrained, but I will say, felt really good to get that win. There's absolutely nothing like watching a UConn game in the Garden. When you get the big red chants, it's unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable. Fall Gallon Fieldhouse and the Rock Chalk and all that, Cameron Indoor Stadium. I think that there aren't 10 places where it's better to watch a college basketball game than UConn in Madison Square Garden. But we got Texas coming up next. I'm not all that concerned about Texas. They are fine. I don't think they have the horses to be able to run with UConn. This will be like a Big East game. So we'll see what ends up happening there. I feel good about that matchup. So we'll be back here again, probably Friday night, maybe Saturday morning, talking about the Texas game and hopefully another win as we head into Big East play. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Before we get into the segment from After Dark last night, please, if you're listening to this, if you've gone this far, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on all of the platforms that you listen to this pod. All that stuff really does help. It helps in the metrics and it helps in the algorithm. And as you guys know, at this point, we're all kind of beholden to the power of the algorithm. So anything you guys can do to interact with this stuff really, really does help. Appreciate you guys listening. And we will see you on the next episode. As you know by now, we have teamed up with BetMGM again this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we will have special offers for Field of 68 fans, including same-game parlays, best-in-class live betting, and daily odds
boost. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code FIELD to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. You download the BetMGM app, you sign up using bonus code FIELD, you deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. Make this college basketball season one for the history books. Make it legendary. And don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code FIELD and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
There is no sport in America that is more difficult to follow than college basketball. It can be overwhelming. That's where the Field of 68 Daily comes into play. The Daily is your go-to source for injury updates, recruiting news, and transfer portal additions that actually matter. For just $50 a year, get access to the same information that your favorite team's coaching staff is subscribed for. Quality content can be hard to find in the college basketball space. The Daily is here to help you with that. Well, welcome back to the Tuesday evening edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. I'm live here at Madison Square Garden. T.O. is live in Simpsonville, South Carolina. Jeff Goodman is live in Charleston, South Carolina, and we are here on the Field of 68 After Dark. Number 5, UConn 77. Number 18, Florida 73. Another win for UConn, another close win for UConn, playing in what was essentially a home environment here for them in Madison Square Garden. Goodman, it feels like this UConn team, they're winning these games. They're getting some of these victories. I don't think they've quite clicked into high gear yet. We still haven't seen Silas Demery be close to what I think he can be. Terrace Reed still looks like he's playing at about like 75% of full health. What do you make of this win for UConn?
Yeah, and we're not going to see this team probably until January. Really look like the UConn that I think Dan Hurley feels like will have a chance to run through the Big East and be one of the best teams in America. But again, you get a good win against a Florida team that, Xavier and Lee look good tonight. And again, Terrace Reed's still shaking off the rust. Braylon Mullins still kind of finding his way. We thought maybe because he had that huge game that all of a sudden Braylon Mullins was going to do that every single game. Well, that's not going to be the case for him. They need.
It would help if he stopped fouling, Jeff.
That would help. That would help. Get on the court and stay on the court. Demery's the one that still baffles me. I'll give you a quote from somebody in the offseason. Somebody said that Silas Demery was going to be the best portal addition of the offseason. I don't know who the hell that was, but right now they're looking like a complete jackass because
it was at the Final Four
look like the best point guard in his own team.
It was at the Final Four, wasn't it? Wasn't it in San Antonio when he went nuts? We did like 3 segments.
It was, but I will say that you misquoted me. I didn't say he would be the best portal addition. I said that he is as good. He's the best fit when it comes to what a team needed and what a player can provide. And I do find that interesting that we're talking about bad takes from a guy that just said Cam Boozer should be the number 6 pick in the NBA draft.
5, and it wasn't my take.
You want to go down that road?
It's not my opinion. It's the opinion of those who I spoke to who have been in the NBA a long time and they're assistant GMs and GMs. So you can say whatever you want. Not my opinion.
Okay, I can say whatever I want, and you'll just put it out there as a headline. Anyway, I think the issue right now with Silas Demery is that he is having trouble processing where he is supposed to be making his reads, if that makes sense, right? Like there's going to be, you run all this stuff for UConn, and I think Dan said this to us the other night when we had him on. Was it after the Kansas game, where he doesn't know where his eyes are supposed to be yet? And I think his head is spinning a little bit when it comes to picking up this offense. And I think Malachi Smith has figured out where he's supposed to be looking, who he's supposed to be setting up. And I don't think it helps with Silas that I think this was the first night that Solo really got it going from 3 and looked like the Solo ball that we have seen in recent years. Now Alex Caravan is playing better, and Braylon Mullins is back out there, T.O.
A point guard's job gets a lot easier when you have your shooters out there and the guys that can make the shots for you.
Yeah, I just can't. I can't emphasize enough eye discipline for a Dan Hurley coach team, where you're looking and where the next option is, because he will get guys open, but it's for half a second to where you have to get that ball there to where they can take advantage, because he is so good at orchestrating those things. If that ball doesn't get there right on time, I like what Jeff said about this UConn team. You're going to see the best UConn team. I would even venture to say the beginning of February. It might take even a little bit longer, but the good news for them is the Big East hasn't been great. So it's good for UConn to get a couple of wins during the non-conference play. They beat BYU earlier this season. They've been able to get some big wins. I would consider today a good win. I think Florida is good. I don't think Florida is great. They did get beasted on the boards, though. So not necessarily a concern per se, but Florida's huge in the front court. They're going to have to dominate that part of the game in order to stay in against teams that I think are, second weekend and Final Four caliber. If we flip it and we talk about the Gators a little bit, am I crazy to think he carries the ball every time he touches it? Does he carry the ball every time he freaking touches it? It's unbelievable.
I kind of think he does too. Before I do want to talk about Florida, because I have a take on that, and I think me and you might disagree. Why do you say it's going to take until early February? I want both of your guys' opinion, because both of you are saying it's going to take a while for them to get there. Why is that, T.O.?
I think you need Demery to be good and to know what he's doing for this team to reach its potential, because he's just another big guard that can come in there and defend and muck it up on one end. And then on the offensive end, if he's just a quality piece that he can get it to, that's going to be huge. I think if he's at his best, UConn will be at its best. You look at some of the other pieces today, I thought Ryba played really well. He came in there and gave some good minutes. I was a little hesitant as far as I didn't know how tough he would be whenever he came over, whenever he came back from Germany. I saw him play with the national team. I was like, he wants to be tough. You can see some of the things that he does requires a lot of skill, and a lot of that's there. And when I talked to Dan in Switzerland, it was like, well, he wants to be tough. He wants to be coached hard. Man, I think he's coming along nicely. There's a lot of pieces that are going to be better later. And I think if anything that we've learned with Dan Hurley and some of the teams, even his national championship teams, they were good early. They weren't great. But by the time February came around, it was like, oh, boy. So I think Demery has to be a part. I think Ryba has to be a part too. And they're going to be much better later.
Jeff, is that?
Yeah, I mean, he's just had key guys miss time, Rob.
That's huge.
That's the biggest thing. You've had two of your top 4 or 5 players miss significant amount of time. So, I think practice is going to help. I think time off is going to help here over the next few weeks, because this is kind of the time when you're not loading up your schedule during finals in December. You're going to be able to practice a lot. And I think that's when a guy like Dan Hurley has a major advantage, especially now that he's got really his top 9 dudes are all healthy, it looks like.
Yeah, they're getting there. Terrace, I don't think Terrace is back to being himself quite yet, but I think that he will get there eventually. Let's flip it to the Florida side. T.O., here's my take on Florida, right? It's that I think that they are getting more or less what they want out of the players that they have, right? In the sense that what Thomas Hawk is. Like, that dude is a stud, man. Like, I think I don't know if there's 10 players in college basketball better than him. I don't know if there's 5. I think Alex Condon has figured out how to be able to be who he is without turning the ball over. He had some turnover issues earlier. The stuff that they could do with him and Hawk and Chinyelu, the high-low stuff they run, is just it's so good. I mean, they're so big and so physical. But they built this team around the idea that they are going to have 2 of the best off-the-dribble guards in college basketball, 2 of the best shot-creating guards in college basketball. And Boogie Flynn, I think, is shooting 24% from 3. He had trouble with fouls tonight. He was not the Boogie Flynn that we thought he was going to be tonight. Not the Boogie Flynn of the second half against Duke. And Xavier Lee scored 19, but he was 5 for 14 from the floor. He was 1 for 7 from 3. It was an inefficient 19, 6, and 5. And I think the biggest issue right now is that those guys, they're not just missing shots. Like,
Boogie Flan threw one off the backboard. He had an air ball. Xavier Lee had 2 or 3 where like it got stuck in the corner of the rim in the side of the backboard. Like I feel like those guys are getting the shots the staff wants them to get, but there is just it's between the ears. It's in their head. I don't think Xavier Lee is this bad of a shooter. I think he thinks he's this bad of a shooter, and the confidence is in the toilet right now.
No, there's only one guy who can shoot it on this team, right? The Klavzar is the only one who can really shoot it that you trust to shoot it right now. Those 2 guards have been up and down. Like that's the hardest part, right? If you're a coach like Todd Golden, what did you have last year? You had guards, you knew what you were going to get every single night. All 3 of them, not one of them, all 3 of them, you knew what you're going to get out of Clayton, Elijah, and Will. And now you don't have anybody. You know, both those guys, you really have no idea what you're going to get night to night. And they don't have.
And here's the thing, but here's the thing about it. Like, we can say that, like, their guards are probably playing at about like 40% of what they should be, right? About 40% of how good I think they are. I think Xavier Lee should be a 35% three-point shooter with the shots that he's taking, and he's at like 18 or 19% right now. Boogie Flan should be about the same, and he's below 25%. And they lost to Arizona by 6 on what was essentially a road game in Las Vegas, right? They lost to TCU by 4, which is not the greatest loss, but TCU's looked good in flashes here. They were apparently the only team that can stay within 35 points of Michigan. They lose to Duke in Cameron in a game where Duke had to make a 3 with 3 seconds left to be able to win it. And then you go to Madison Square Garden in what was a road game essentially against UConn, and you lose by, you come back, you're up late in the second half and you lose by 4. I think that this is a team where if those guards can figure it out, that's a big if, T.O., a massive if. But if they do figure it out, I don't think I want to play this team in March.
Rob Doster's huge on moral victories. Huge on moral victories. And hey, look, I've been hesitant on Xavier Lee. You know, the thing that scares me is about this Florida team. When Xavier Lee's hot, his points are so loud that are the way you're getting these buckets sustainable? And I'm going to say no. That's the big thing. Like, he takes a lot of hard shots, and sometimes he hits some. Sometimes he gets around and he gets hot. But the problem is he hits some. He's about to take 4 more difficult ones. So, he was 5 of 14 today, 1 of 7. You talk about Klavzar being the best shooter on the team. He didn't take a 3 tonight. So, I don't know. I don't know about this Florida team. Guards win. That bottom line, you got to have them. They don't, you have to have bigs, don't get me wrong. But if you don't have guards to go along with them, you're out in the middle of the lake on a nice boat with no way to get around. So
they'd love to trade a big for another guard, right? I mean, think about that. If they could trade, they have too many bigs. If they could trade one of those bigs for another, for a wing scorer or another guard, or true point. I just don't know if Xavier Lee's good enough. I don't.
That's Jeff. To be honest with you, that's where I've been. That's where I've been with him too. I just don't know that he's so erratic,
right?
And it's almost like he'd be better at all.
Final Four, they're good enough. Listen, Rob, you went through it, and yes, they're not getting blown out by teams. They're hanging with Duke, obviously at Duke, and making a run at the end to get back in that game and take the lead late. So they're not that far off, but I don't think, like Tio is saying, I don't think those guards are consistent enough to even put together 4. I don't have confidence that they can put together 4 straight wins. I don't. I don't think they're a Final Four contender right now because of their inconsistency. Because, again, I trust their front court. Those guys know what they're doing. They've done it before. They know their roles. But the guards, yeah, they're too up and down for me.
Yeah, look, I just think it's impossible to win anything when your 2 best backcourt players are both shooting about as bad as they've ever shot from beyond the arc. And I think that there's eventually going to be regression. I think you're right about Xavier Lee. I just don't think he's as bad as we've seen. And if he gets to the point where he's shooting 33% from 3 the rest of the year instead of 18% from 3, with the way that this front court is playing, I think that is a team that can win a bunch of games. So you got 4 coming up here.
Ass off tonight too, though. UConn guarded. Like UConn really defended. And, the biggest thing with Boogie Flan is like he is shifty off the dribble, but if you're not giving him any like any closeout, if you're not giving him anything on the perimeter with a little bit of daylight to make something happen, and he's having to do it from scratch every single time, that's freaking hard. And I give that credit to UConn because I thought they really defended today. So, yeah, Florida, I'm hesitant there. Like, I think Chinyelu is awesome. I'm a big fan of his. I'm not sure how much game he has, but the dude plays as hard as ever, and he looks like Zeus. How about Chinyelu and Keita standing right beside each other? Dude, those dudes are huge. They'd be like American gladiators.
They really are. They're not just big. They look like they have like never spent a day outside of the weight room, right? Like all they do is just sit there and do bicep curls every day. Keita, by the way, like he's kind of on my shit list today. Can we just talk about this for a second? He dunked so hard and swung on the rim that he broke the rim. Part of the reason why we're sitting here at 12:20 and we still have about 30 minutes left of the show instead of having like 10 minutes left of the show is because he broke the friggin' rim for swinging on it. And when he swung on the rim, he kicked RJ Godfrey in the head. Like, come on, Keita. You're on my list now.